All right, welcome. So I'm here with my dear client and friend, Katarina, and I'm so excited for this session because this is part two. We're doing this little series where we're bringing on folks to my dear client and friend share some stories of inspiration of, you know, it's not easy navigating parenting these days, and maybe ever. But I think particularly we're doing a lot. A lot of what's happened is we pulled our villages apart. We're not necessarily connected in and tapped into community of like-minded parents and or mentors that we can lean on when we have, challenging times. And one thing I saw in Katarina that's been so inspiring is that she continues to lean into this idea of having a village, and that even though she has a coaching background and a lot, like many of us that come to this parenting work can really shine in other spaces and even in our parenting. But then there's these places where we're like, why is this so hard? It doesn't really have to necessarily be so hard. And once we tap into the opportunity of mentorship and community, like we can just go so much further. There's that proverb that I think, we've talked about before, where it says, if you want to go fast, go alone. But if you want to go far, go together. And Katarina, I just would love to hear your thoughts on even just that as we get kick things off, and maybe introduce yourself a little bit more, like a little bit about your background, where you are, your kids. And
Yeah, sure. So I'm Katarina. I have 3 kids, an almost 11-year-old, 7 and 3-year-old next week. Can't believe he's going to be 3. And I'm recently transitioned into being a single parent, which, if like Vanessa was definitely my saving grace during that really, really hard transitional time into single parenthood. And yeah, just like as a coach in general, like I believe in the healing power of community because like we were never actually meant to do this alone, but in modern day society, we often find ourselves alone because of the fast pace of life. Like we see other people, but we're always like just passing them. We're not necessarily taking the time to really connect. And when we become intentional about connecting with people, we realize that we aren't alone in all of these feelings. And there are like common ways that other people feel, especially in parenting. Like I remember when I first came, like I was really struggling with my oldest being really, really rude. And I felt like a failure. Like I felt like, what did I do wrong? And then hearing other parents talk about their kids and realizing that it's just a developmental milestone. Like it's not really a reflection on me. So like it allowed me to, like, through hearing other people's stories and other people's experiences, it allowed me to like release some shame. And I think like when we realize that we're not alone in this, and we're not, and then we don't have to do this alone. We don't have to figure it out on our own. It just kind of like releases the shame and the pressure of being a human. And in my line of work, like that's as a coach, like that's like my goal is to like release shame and pressure. And I think community does that inherently as well.
And is there anything about this particular community that stands out to you, like the larger Raising Our Resilience community, but also like the folks who say yes to the year-long program, the immersion, right? And who are in the work, like with that level of commitment? Like, what has that been like for you?
Yeah, it's for me finding other parents that are dedicated to raising children in a different way, like raising children that that you want to be like, like have their own autonomy and choice and values. Like for me, I've noticed a lot of other parents is like they want to kind of like push their own agenda on their kids, and that was always like really hard for me to relate to. Like I don't add, like being like a neurodiverse person myself, like I always wanted like choice and agency in like my own life, and so I can't imagine like forcing my kids to do something that they really don't want to do because they should do it. So like coming here and finding other parents that like want to instill like healthy values and communication and boundaries and like just those kinds of things was really refreshing. And I kind of felt like I found more like my people, very like-minded in this community. And yeah, I just feel like I never feel like I'm doing anything wrong. Like I never feel like I'm parenting in the wrong way. Like I love like the way you kind of like create this this just like culture in this community of like there is no like you're always doing like the best you can, and if it's not working, then let's try another tool. Like it never feels like, oh no, you messed up and you have to do something. I hope I'm making sense. Do you know what I'm saying? Like I never feel like I'm failing. Like I always feel like I have options. I always feel like I have support. Like I always, if something doesn't work, I know that there's something else that I can find. And if I can't think of it, I know there's other people there to help me provide those other options. And to me, that is really what helps create like the culture of this community, is that like it's just like no shame. Like there's just like, okay, that didn't work, let's move on to something else. Let's piece this together, let's workshop this together. And that's something that I really appreciated about this community too.
Yeah. And we've seen you really grasp the tools and run with them. Like there's a couple of memories we captured in particular after our big events. Like we have these virtual, for those of you who aren't aware, we have these big 3-day virtual retreats where we immerse ourselves in emotional mastery work and then motivation mastery work, where we're really looking at like intrinsic motivation. And Katerina, you're always a standout of like, okay, now I have a plan of how I'm like for this child, because you have 3 kids too. So you have to sort of like think, you can't just go, oh yeah, this is great. You know, I can kind of pull on these for my one kid. Like, no, they're different kids and they all need you, something from you. And I just remember you making plans for each of your children. And I'm wondering if it'd be okay to play back a little piece of like your takeaway right after one of these immersive experiences, and then hear your perspective now. And then also demo for folks what it's like to have a coach in your corner, and we can give you some live coaching today. Would that be okay?
Yeah, that would be fantastic. I'm really curious to see what I said because I have like no recollection of what video you're talking about. So this will be fun.
So, yeah, this is literally a year ago before your new haircut.
Oh,
But
yeah,
yeah, it was the end of the
shaved my
motivation
head.
master weekend. Yeah. So first we're going to talk, it's going to be a little bit of just a recap on some of the struggles with your eldest son. But then
Okay.
I really want to also and some tools that you thought would be especially useful for him. And then you have another one where you talk about your daughter, another piece, and her perfectionism and how to support her with that. So just, yeah, it's going to be like a sort of a walk down memory lane of like, what were you working through a year ago? And maybe you can give us some perspective on where things are now and how we
Wow.
got there.
Okay. This is
Okay,
going to be
this is
fun.
fun. Yeah, here we go.
The weekend, I was having a lot of struggles with my son, not wanting to do things, not having a lot of motivation to finish his schoolwork because we homeschool. Even when I gave him choices to try to like include him a little bit more, ask for his input on what changes we wanted to make, he was just kind of shut down to that. And one of my biggest takeaways of this weekend is the strategies, just like recalling times where he did do the thing that I'm asking him to do now. It'll help him kind of realize that he can do it because he's done it before, and like drawing on that past experience. And then another thing that I really want to help him with is the competency piece, because he is neurodiverse, he has ADHD. So bringing in the competency piece of the I Care model that we learned this weekend, and like helping him break down things into actionable steps and scaffold and kind of like encourage him to do that, I think will really help with his lack of executive functioning skills. And that's a piece that I'm really, really excited about.
So let's pause there for a second.
Yeah.
Because both of your children that you talk about in this, I know we've worked a lot with your younger one too in recent months, but back then you really had a lot going on with your eldest and then your daughter. So maybe walk us through, like, where do you feel like you are now? I mean, the way you've been describing your eldest recently is just like he's such a self-starter, like he's starting his own business.
Yeah.
And I mean, this the road you all have traveled in this year. So maybe give us a snapshot of that, and then let's see if we can reflect and pull a few things forward of like, what can you attribute that to? Like, what did you do? What tools did you bring in? How did he respond to them? That sort of thing. Well, let's reflect. So after you give it.
So that still the competency piece is really, really big for him, because often in a traditional school setting, he felt like they didn't necessarily provide him the support he needed. So he felt that he just didn't have the tools, and he felt like he couldn't do it because he wasn't competent. And he felt like, he used to think he was stupid. And like, so that is like one of the reasons why we pulled him out of school and decided to homeschool. And now, so like we were doing a really structured, kind of like reading during that time. And like, he was kind of like struggling, staying focused and motivated. And we got through that, and we kind of got over the hump, and now he's reading. And now we're doing much more of like, yeah, so that was huge. And that was always our goal, is to like get him over this hump and then get him reading enough that he can like then use it as a tool for further learning. And now we're actually like, I thought we needed more structure for him to get him motivated. I've actually pulled back the structure, and we're doing more of an unschool model, because he is such a self-starter, that now he's bringing me ideas, and I really play on that competency piece. And I really I'm like, wow, you're so good at talk, like you can pick up a conversation with a stranger and like ask great questions and like figure things out. Like you're really good at like figuring out the information that you need. Like, for example, my parents have a pond in their by their house, and they bought some like little baby fish, little baby tilapia, and they put them in this pond when they were this big. And Adero, talked to the vendor about like how to take care of them, talk to different people. He watched videos. This is all self-motivated. I didn't have to do like any of this. And he took care of this fish. And then the fish ended up having babies. And then he got the babies and started selling them back to the vendor to make his money back. And then recently they were big enough, and he caught one and ate it and cooked it himself. And so there's all of these just like life skills. And it came from like understanding what motivates him specifically and what I need to focus on. And that competency piece is huge. He needs to feel like he can do it. And if he doesn't know how to do it, then he has the tools to ask for help. And that has made the world of a difference for him to like literally start his own business at 10 years old. And, he's just super charismatic, and he's great at making connections and playing on his strengths, and like really honing in on that competency piece made such a big difference for him over the last year.
Amazing. And I feel like, sometimes what we need is to get grounded in like a perspective, like a model, for example, the eye care model you mentioned in the video, coming to the retreat and everything, and really figuring out like, of this model, like what is the best fit for this child, for the thing that's going to really like, I think of it as like turning up the dial of motivation, right? Like which of these is the one that's really going to tap into something that's really natural to this child. And I'm hearing competence as the standout from the 5. And the way that you brought in structure when it was needed for something like reading, where without the structure, some kids really won't be able to integrate all of those skills. Did that, and then were able to recognize when it was time to flex away from the structure and allow for more of, I would say it's a combination of competence and interest, right? He was highly interested.
Yeah. So the special interest with him is like really important too. And then like something else that I wanted to bring in is like the growth mindset. He used to have a I can't do it. I can't do it. I can't do it. For a long time, but then really honing in on the reminding him and playing on that competency piece naturally brought in like more of a growth mindset. But the growth mindset is only there when the interest and the competency are present.
Wow. Yeah. And so what I saw you do, Katerina, I mean, I'm just going to kind of like give my recap. you came to the retreat, you learned the model, you made plans about how to use it, you paid attention to how you responded, and you really just went with the ones that were working, building in other things along the way, and really end up using. And then there's autonomy too.
Yeah, yeah.
Choices, right? And there's relationships with maybe the vendor and the grandparents, and so you kind of rocked the whole model, emphasizing the things that were most impactful.
I
Over the
I
past
always tease that that weekend literally changed my life because like first of all, I'm a nerd for a good model, and I love, as a former teacher, like I love stuff like that. I love rubrics. I love like a good checklist. And I remember having the guide from that weekend and like having a color for each kid and like mapping out like the strengths and weaknesses of like I like nerded out that weekend. It was so much fun. And then I used that like not only with my kids, but like with myself.
Yes.
And with like the people around me. And like I feel like it made me a better communicator, that whole thing too. And just like the growth that I've seen in Adaro over the last year really has been pretty incredible.
Well, a lot of what we would call behavior or discipline problems at the core are just like our motivation issues or emotional issues or both,
Mm-hmm.
in some kind of combination of the two. And when we can tackle those in an empowering way, instead of, like you said, same as the container being shame-free for the adults, we want to create family containers that are shame-free for all the family members too. And so we actually get to experience it in the community and then emulate that, right, in our own homes. And I feel like when you're doing this puzzling, you're not making it wrong when motivation isn't there. And I think that is such a huge mindset shift that is so empowering to everybody in the family.
Mm-hmm.
So I just, I want to uplift this example of you really, sticking with that and your commitment to creating the kind of, empowering family unit that you want, and you want to be a part of, that you feel proud of.
Yeah. I guess I did do that.
Yeah, see, right? That's why I love these review moments, because we just kind of get to see, like, because when you're in the minutia of it, a lot of times what we focus on is what still needs to be done, because otherwise, who's going to, right? I love the wins that we get to share at the beginning of our trainings and our coaching sessions, and these kinds of like bigger, like 1-year retrospectives.
Yeah, they're pretty powerful. And something else that I want to point out is like, I'm the kind of person that I tend to like want to do it all and all at once. And
Mm-hmm.
I kind of made a commitment that I was just going to pick one thing and focus on that. And like, if it felt really resistant, then I would shift. But if it didn't, I was just going to like be dedicated to focusing on something simple. And because like, I think kids just need that sometimes. And that has also been a big shift with the Adaro too, is like just like simplifying thing and not asking so many things all at once, just like really getting specific on like the one thing that he needed most like at that time. And then all of the other things kind of like started to come into place without me even having to focus on them, because it's all connected. So that was something that like really stood out from that whole experience, looking back till now.
Beautiful. I love it. And that's so comforting. Like, isn't it comforting, everyone who's listening to this, that you don't have to do it all at once? And
No.
isn't that more humane for everyone? Like, not just for them. They have this expression of like drinking from a fire hose. But I feel like, instead of getting blasted, we get to just like take sustainable sips and gulps when we need them and keep it. And it's much more sustaining, right? And really deeper, more lasting change can happen when you create like habits, or you work on one project at a time. And especially when we're learning new parenting skills too. Like, I just had a welcome call. We're kicking off a cohort. There are a few spots available if anybody's interested, but we kicked it off yesterday with a welcome call. And I was just really reassuring everybody, it's okay. I'm going to give you like 10 tools. It's okay for you to pick one to try at a time. Actually, it's recommended. And it's also kind of a humane approach to like our own personal growth as parents, to not feel like, because I think there's a lot of pressure of like, you should be doing all the things all at once, all the time, and providing everything for your kids 24/7. And that's just not possible. And to try to do that is a quick road to burnout. I mean, and I've seen it time and time again, parents kind of coming to me being like, look at everything we're trying. And I'm like, woof, yeah, let's break it down and focus on the things that we think will have the most impact. And we'll get to the other things later. And we always do, like you're mentioning, they kind of come because they're all connected. Let's find like the most important piece first. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. That's excellent. Do you mind if we shift to your daughter now?
Yeah, for sure.
Can we do a retrospective on her? Okay. I'm
Let's
excited.
do it.
Yeah, here we go.
And then the last thing that I'm excited about is helping my daughter. Like, she has a little bit of perfectionism going on and she wants to do things a certain way, and just helping her realize that everybody makes mistakes and it's okay to make mistakes, and the mistakes are opportunities to grow, and really setting a foundation with my older kids so that my last one can kind of go along for the ride, and hopefully we'll all have a growth mindset in the family for him to grow up in.
Tell us how things are going with Sedona. I'm so curious. Do the same.
It's so crazy how much changes in 1 year, because she used to have a lot of meltdowns. She had this art class, and like, if she didn't follow the directions like exactly, like she had a really hard time with it, and that translated to like her schoolwork too. And now we'll do a project and she'll make a mistake, or like, I even notice like when my perfectionism comes up and I get like kind of controlling, and like she can feel that tension, she's started to remind me, Mom, it doesn't have to be perfect. Like, she started like reminding me that things don't have to be perfect. Like, Mom, it's like, we don't have to follow the directions exactly. So, and it's basically like, that phrase, like the way we talk to our kids becomes their inner voice. Like, yes. But it also becomes like the way they talk to other people. Like, they start to like mimic like the way they talk to themselves, and then they start to like carry that on. And I notice like just me reminding her, like, mistakes is how we learn. Mistakes is how we learn. It's okay if we mess up. Like, even mommy makes mistakes, and just like this really simple, repetitive, like, oopsie, it's okay. Let's fix it together. That we just have kind of made part of our just like part of our flow of doing new things or projects or baking or whatever we're doing. Now she's, stepped into that maturity of like reminding me that we don't have to be perfect. And so that's how ingrained it is. Like, it's inherent now that it's like, it's okay to make mistakes.
You took that growth mindset piece from the weekend and in our coaching, like, and you really ran with that one for her. And I remember talking through like what resources might have an impact on her, but then we did come to like the simplicity of modeling for her, and the way that you react to mistakes, the way that you model your, what you do, how the self-compassion and space for yourself to make mistakes in front of the children and to admit to them. And I just really saw you commit to that, Katarina. And I think there's something really valuable here that we all can, really see from your example, that, it's one thing to tell a kid it's okay to make mistakes. It's a whole nother ball game you're in when you show them that it's okay, and really genuinely, like, it's all aligned, like even the tone of your voice, your body language. You're not going, it's okay, fuck, like you're actually like, find it within yourself to like take that breath and be like, it's okay, we can start over, or we can clean that up, or let's see how I wonder how we can fix that.
And I do use a humor a lot too with that.
Good. Yes. Like the lightning strategy.
Yeah. Like, I accidentally, put salt in my coffee or, something like that. Yeah. And like, so I use like little moments like that and just like kind of make fun, like, everybody makes mistakes. And like, that always
it's kind of the antidote to harshness, and I grew up with a lot of harsh expectation around perfection. And I still remember like getting yelled at whenever I'd make a mistake, and there'd be like, I'd make a mess or something. And I remember early on in my career as a preschool teacher, I was basically raising 24 to 36 kids at a time for 5 years. And then again, later with the elementary for another 10 years, and then my stepchildren. So I had the whole range. I have to do a little self-talk for about 2 to 3 years to break the habit of being really harsh on myself and others in my environment when something would go wrong, like, oh, someone needs to be blamed and like, called out and like, and made to learn not to do this, right? And I still remember coming up with phrases like, oh, like just simply like, oh, water spills sometimes. That's what water does, and just being able to go, just like oh, okay.
Yeah. I always say, these things happen.
Yeah. Okay.
That's like our phrase. Even Ellington says it sometimes. Like he dropped a cup and it broke and he's like, these things happen.
These things happen. That's beautiful. I love it. The tone. And it's just, it's like, what grace there is in that, to be human and to be a growing, learning individual who doesn't have enough life experience to do it perfectly.
Yeah.
And please don't try even when you're an adult, right? Like just do your best, see what happens, and then things happen. Yeah. And so there's this one time where I was home on a break, and I'd been teaching for about 10 years, and I had really internalized this for myself, and I put the wrong soap in the dishwasher. And it was over my mom's brand new kitchen floor, wood floor, not tile. So like, what is the worst thing to put on, hardwood floors? Like a big, large amount of water, right?
Yeah.
And the stuff is just spewing out like it's a disaster. We're supposed to be already somewhere, we're leaving. And I'm watching her nervous system respond to that in the way that I grew up around. And then I observed myself not having that reaction. And the contrast just made me really think about the generational change that's possible when we do this kind of work. And of course, like she ended up co-regulating down to where I was. But it took her about 20 minutes of freaking out. But I stayed calm. I got the towels. I turned the thing off. I called the person to let them know we're late. I just kind of handled it. And I kept saying things like these things happen. Oh, what a silly mistake, right? Some like lightness.
Yeah.
This is what happens when you try to run someone else's equipment, and she's just losing it on the side, and I'm just not reacting to that. I'm just doing me. And then she comes down to like, yeah, I should probably label the soap better.
Yeah.
Like in a 20-minute resolution, whereas, if I don't know, like if we hadn't gotten there, it might have been like, if I'd gone her direction and taken it personally and got into the trauma of it, and said, you always do that, whatever. I just didn't. I opted out. And that's what the opportunity to be.
And that's really hard to do with mothers. So go
oh
you.
My gosh. This is what I'm seeing you and other members in the immersion do, though. And in this work is like, we're saying, what we grew up with can be improved on. There's good to carry forward. Oh my gosh, my mom gave me so much. And there are things that, are ready to evolve and shift. And seeing you do that in her work. And now your daughter, who had a perfectionist streak, has all these skills at such a young age. How old is she now? Let everybody know.
She's 7. She'll be 8 in October. I can't.
It's wild.
They just keep getting bigger.
She's like heading into upper elementary age. It's wild.
Yeah.
Yeah. And what a foundation, though. I mean, I think I started to soothe my perfectionist, wounds probably when I was 22 is when I started. She got to do it in her formative years as part of like her foundation for life. Like
I just, raising kids that don't have like perfectionists or people pleasing tendencies. I'm like, the world is going to be a much better place.
Yes. Yeah. And those of us who are awake to this, it's like, we kind of can't help but do something about it,
Yeah. It's like, I feel, it is a choice, but it doesn't feel like a choice. It feels like just the next right move, Yeah.
And I think that within it, and I've seen you, Katerina, really claim this for yourself, is this opportunity to become the best versions of ourselves for the sake of our children, getting to see that model. And that does not mean perfect. And that's what we're making sure is clear. It's not about showing up perfectly in every moment. It's showing up as like a human with the right intentions and asking the right questions. Right?
Yeah. And then bringing in repair when necessary. Like,
yes.
But not trying to not mess up as a parent, because if you what I've realized is like when I try to be perfect and when I try to not mess up with them, and then I go into a shame spiral because I do mess up, then they lose me. But when I'm just like in it and human, then we get to like be human together. And and I do mess up, and like my daughter, like she says things to me like, I know your feelings aren't my fault,
Yeah.
Like we just have like this understanding. It's just so beautiful. And we fight and I make mistakes and she, has her moments, and we're not perfect by any means, but we just have this kind of flow that we always get to a place of calm and understanding together by the end of it.
Yeah, and I think one of the things that folks are always saying to me is that their highest priority is that relationship that they're building with their kid. And then once they've done a year of the work, they realize that there's another layer, which is that they want to be the better version of themselves, because they realize how powerful that is. And sometimes if we try to start there, it can almost be too big of an undertaking, like too much pressure. But I've seen you like just stepping into better and better versions of yourself through this parenting work. And it's been, so beautiful.
Yeah. I think often, when you've had a tough past, like many of us have, it's much easier to focus on other people first, especially when you're like socialized as a woman, that we're always taught to put everybody else first. And sometimes that's just like what we have to do to be like, oh, wait, like I'm doing all these things and I'm caring for them and I'm attuning to their needs in a way that I didn't get.
Yeah.
Maybe now it's my turn. The kids are good, like the kids are good. They're fine. They know my feelings aren't their fault. And now it's like, I need to stop shaming my own feelings.
Yeah.
But it's almost like that primal, like I needed to make sure that they were good and safe before I could really like turn and dedicate the time to myself that I really need to, meet the needs that I'm now meeting for them, the needs that I didn't get met. To take it deeper.
Yes to all of that. I mean, there's so much healing and growth possible there. And what an example that you're providing for your kids of like, that self-awareness and being able to, do hard things. I mean, it's not easy to address wounds. It's not easy to repair and admit mistakes. It's not easy to take the higher road and, find out what we need in order to not put our needs on other people in ways that, doesn't work. I just, and a lot of you don't know this, but Katarina just found a way to continue the parenting work and join the immersion for another year, for her second year. It's really exciting when grads decide to continue, and you're in good company. We have 11 families who are in their second, third, or fourth year.
It's a really awesome group.
Like half of our community right now. What is it about parenting work? Like, because there are a lot of different programs you could be in, Katarina, especially because you're in the coaching world. What is it about parenting work, and in particular, the ones who are drawn into this community, this like kind of shame-free, empowering, space that calls to you to continue? Like, I think it's kind of rare, but I want to hear from your perspective, like what it is that you and the other members have been able to create together in this space.
I feel like for me, that like I want to do this work so my kids don't have to. Like for me, it's very much about breaking generational patterns that just once protected, my family of origin, but like are now a crutch and like getting in the way of like me being that best version of myself. And like being in this specific community, like I want to be around parents that are doing that work too. Because like, I could probably be working with a health coach, or I could probably working, but for me, it's like when I'm choosing to get the support around parenting, it's like I'm healing in both directions. I think we've talked about this on some calls, and like when you were talking about like moving from like the first year of immersion into like the legacy, is that it's like I'm the pattern breaker. Like I'm the one that's choosing to do this work to heal like the past generations, but also like not to pass it on. Like I'm the barrier to, like it stops with me kind of thing. And I want to be around other people who feel the same way.
Yeah.
And because it's really clear when people don't, like that they're choosing to, or they're either choosing to continue patterns because they're unaware that they're no longer working, or they just don't have the awareness. Like I'm very in this work, in my own healing journey, I'm very dedicated to surrounding myself with people who aren't afraid to go there and aren't afraid to do the work and aren't afraid to like really have these hard conversations to take. Because to me, this is like, it's all or nothing. Like, we don't have to do it all at once, like we were talking about, but it's on me, and I don't want to carry that alone. I think it's a collective effort. And parenting is, like, it's just like part of collective liberation. And that to me is really like that. It's like, it feels so important. Like, it feels like when I think about parenting work and becoming a better parent and teaching other parents how to like de-shame and break patterns, like, it feels like so immense. And it's like, you have to do that work in community. Like, there's no way to do this alone. And that's like I used to feel it in my body. I'm like,
so I think a lot of people are out there doing some of the work alone, and they're doing the let's bring in this little this. I'm sorry, I don't mean to say little, because sometimes it can have a big impact, but let's bring in this method I heard about, and I'll read a book and listen to a podcast. But there's something that happens when you're with real, like, live with other people that are, getting to share, like you're sharing with us today. And thank you so much for being like so open with the community today. That you can take on bigger projects and bigger goals and more far-reaching, impactful action. I know that my goals get bolder when I feel like I have a team or a squad or like a village right behind me. I can go for it. Like, you think of all the epic tales. The ones to me that were always more believable were ones where they had support behind them. Like, they found their posse that was going to like move things forward. And then we can dream bigger, and we can feel more fortified in that and inspired by others. So yeah, Katarina, you're a big part of the community. We're so glad that you're here for another year with us. And what a wonderful gift to like just uplift your story to the bigger crew of the Raising Our Resilience community. We have about 2,000 people in our community.
I think I started that's where I started out, as the Raising Our Resilience Facebook group.
That's right. Yep.
So
and you had a friend who was already doing the one-on-one and then the immersion work.
Yeah, I think we were both in the Facebook group for about a year before she started to take the leap, and then I followed a year later. But I remember for a while it was the only Facebook group I actually went to like look at the content, I think, because it was so helpful.
Yeah, and then the kind of people show up, right? And like finding those connections. And I love bringing parents together in community who are like-minded. And I definitely ask things like, why now? And there needs to be a big reason, and like one that's going to be motivated, so that we can have this momentum. I was just saying to the welcoming the new families, and Katarina, you probably felt this too, then we'll need to wrap, is that it's almost like when there's this high level of commitment in a community of people, and they don't have to have the same reason they're there, but they all need to have a reason, right?
Yeah.
Some fire in their belly, some vision, something they really want to either get out of or create, like all of it. That momentum is like a strong like current in a river. And then if you find yourself looping out and needing to handle other things in life, all you need to do is just get back in the water, and you can get propelled forward again.
Yeah. I definitely feel that in this community, because there are times when you've seen me like the last couple trainings, like I kind of dipped out because I just couldn't handle it. And then one day I was like, wait a minute, I need to get back in. And then I jumped back in, and I felt like that motivation, just like momentum, kicked back in. And then I was at every training for like the next 6 weeks or something like that. And it's 100%, that analogy like describes it perfectly, that it just like, it's always there to like keep you going, even in the background, even if you need a break, like the community's still there and functioning and supportive, and you don't have to like recreate the momentum, because it's like there when you need it.
Yeah. And when you come in, you add to that too, Katarina. So you've been such a gift to work with. It's been such an honor. I'm so happy we get to continue. And any last thought you want to share with, the community who, like you've been in their shoes, you've been in the Raising Resilience parent group, like you said, for about a year, and, anything that you want them to know from being on the other side of a year of, the immersion and having this kind of all these breakthroughs.
Yeah. I don't know. The only thing I would say is like, I never regret asking for help. Like once I learned how to ask for help, once I learned that it was like okay to ask for help and okay to ask for support, and that like took the pressure off of like knowing what I need all the time, because sometimes that's like really overwhelming, like trying to balance like our needs and our kids' needs. And I've just gotten into like this really good habit of like, it's okay to ask for help. And I never regret asking for help and support. Like I'm always grateful to lean on the community. I'm always grateful that there's people there when I'm struggling, because I just get back on the horse so much quicker. And I never regret patting myself with support and having a team. There's like no negative to that, in my opinion.
And speaking of which, let's not forget, did you have something in mind that you wanted some coaching around today, as we're kind of winding down the interview part? We can also do a part 3 and save that for another time if you'd like.
I don't know. I don't know how you want to go for time, but I feel pretty good. Like my kids are kind of sick right now, and but we have like a good rhythm, and I feel like I'm using all of my tools, and we had a coaching, like I can't think of anything right now.
Yeah, we kind of took care of you this last like 6 weeks. Like you
Yeah,
said, you
I
got
feel
back in and got your session on the calendar, and yeah, really took care of some things.
it really feels at this moment in time, just being able to, I think just reviewing how far we've come in a year, like that in itself was really, really helpful. And that almost like coached me in a way. It was like, wow, I have come a long way, and I have implemented the tools. Cause sometimes, I do get stuck in my head around like whether or not I'm doing enough. And I'm like, compared to last year, it's funny, like I'm doing more, but I feel less stressed because of the support and because of, it just, so I can't think of anything right now because you've been so supportive just in the past, month.
I feel complete right now. Yeah.
Yeah.
And then maybe in the future we can schedule it if you'd like. We can schedule time for you to come on for a different kind of supportive. I agree. The retrospective was powerful. Like we really fortified some things for you and gave you some of that perspective, and it was really meaningful. So yeah, I think we've given the community something that they can be inspired by today, and I really appreciate that.
I thank you for having me on and allowing me to share, and I got so much out of this, so thank you.
You're welcome. All right, so everybody out there, thanks for joining us. If you're listening to the recording or they're on live on Facebook, say hello so we can see in the comments, even if it's a replay. And then Katarina will see your comments too, because she's in the group. So if you wanted to just even give her any reflections back of like takeaways, things that she said that stood out, any questions you have for either of us, feel free to drop them in the comments. Otherwise, this is a wrap of another Monday Mindset Moment with this really fun format of bringing on our esteemed clients and getting to get their insights from the other side of a year or more of mentorship. So it's a really exciting time for us all to pick up something and go with it. I think that's what I hear too, is like, find your people, find your mentor, and know that you can just focus on one thing at a time, and really, it can really get you really far. And I think that's, you get to be kind to yourself in the process. So thank you for that, Katarina, and so much more today.
Yeah, you're welcome.
Lots of love to everybody. Bye for now. See you next time.